Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I have a few reminders while folks are still joining before we get started. We like to keep our webinars conversational and welcome your questions throughout. You can send the questions to the panel through the Q&A button located on your Zoom control panel. We'll try to answer as many as we can live, but if we don't get to your question, we'll be sure to follow up with you afterwards. You can follow today's conversation on Twitter, as we'll be live tweeting throughout the webinar at Rio_SEO and using the hashtag RioWebinar. Finally, we will send a link to the webinar recording within 24 hours, so look out for a follow-up email from our marketing team. My name is Scott, and I am the Director of Business Development for Rio SEO, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. Today, we're joined by a fantastic panel of digital and content marketing and local SEO experts to help us discuss how to simplify your keyword strategy to help your businesses rank higher and in turn convert more searches. I'm joined today by Carrie Hill, local SEO specialist and analyst at Sterling Sky, Joe Spurtzel, Group Director of SEO at Horizon Media, and Chad Klingensmith, Senior SEO Strategist at Rio SEO. I'll have you all briefly introduce yourself and your background. Carrie, would you like to go first, followed by Joe, then Chad?
Sure. My name is Carrie Hill. I am a local SEO analyst with Sterling Sky. We are a Canadian-based company with subsidiaries in the United States. We're a fully remote team, and we have team members all over the US and Canada. We specialize mainly in local, smaller businesses, although we do some enterprise as well. I live in the mountains of Colorado. I love my mountains. I was just in Minnesota and have new appreciation for my mountains. And I have been in the SEO game since 2005. So I've been here a long time, and I've seen a lot of things come and go, and a lot of strategies, kind of come and go by the wayside. So I'm excited to talk about keyword research, because I think this is something that has been a tactic that people do the same thing they did 10 years ago, and maybe we can update their processes and procedures a bit.
Wow, 2005, Carrie, and digital is almost like 3 lifetimes.
Right?
Yeah,
like I remember the old school, like hot frog days, like
Awesome. All right, Joe, how about you?
Hey, I'm Joe Spurzel. I'm the Group Director of SEO at Horizon Media. We're a large agency based in New York City. Also have offices in LA and Toronto. We are the largest independent agency in the country. I oversee a small but mighty team here that is part of an integrated performance marketing team within the walls of Horizon Media. I've been in the SEO game for a little over 12 years now. Seen a lot of different things, like Carrie said, maybe not as much firsthand, but I've been on the agency side for most of that. So definitely bring the agency viewpoint to the table today. I'm excited to talk about keyword research as well. I love it.
Fantastic. And Horizon's just a small little company. That's all.
Yeah.
Chad, how about you, buddy?
Hey everybody, I'm Chad Klingensmith. I'm the Senior SEO Strategist at Rio. And I too have been around the SEO game for quite a while, since 2005 as well. And I've really been focusing exclusively on local for the last 7 years. So, and it's definitely evolved quite a bit, but you know what? Some things have not evolved, and some things have been consistent as well, and which is pretty strange, because in most industries you don't see that. So some of the fundamentals that I learned way back in the day still hold true nowadays. So, but overall, it's been great. Keyword research is absolutely the foundation of any good SEO campaign. So I'm looking forward to discussing this today along with my colleagues.
Fantastic. And I have the great pleasure of working with Chad, and Chad is absolutely a master at what he does. So before we jump in, we wanted to get started with a quick audience poll to see what you're wanting to improve with your content keyword strategy. There are 5 answers to choose from. A, determining the right keywords to target. B, incorporating long tail keywords into your strategy. C, segmenting and or prioritizing which keywords to target. D, using schema markup to boost your keyword strategy. And E, all of the above. So take a minute, vote on what you think is the most important. And we'll let that run for a minute there. See how everyone's doing. Here they go. Okay. Coming in fast and furious here. All right. Couple more, still voting. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. And so what we see now as the largest is obviously all of the above, followed closely as in a tie using schema markup to boost your keyword strategy and determining the right keywords to target. So I think that's a great place for us to start because that gives us a good foundation of what everybody thinks is important as we talk about keyword strategy. So understanding the thought process of your searchers will help you better meet their needs and draw them into your site by using keywords and phrases that will provide the best solution for their query. Joe, how can a business best determine what a searcher really wants when seeking their product or service?
Yeah, I think this is part of the keyword research trend that doesn't happen very often. I think going and reading reviews and actually trying to figure out how people are talking about your product, your company, your brand, whatever it is that you're trying to do keyword research for, utilizing that information and then talk to people, right? I think so much of what we do on a day-to-day basis in SEO is tools-based and things like that. I think a lot of what helps me, especially if it's a subject matter that maybe I'm not as versed in, is finding out how other people would search for it, right? Ask around, ask your, I ask my wife all the time. She's probably wants to kill me most of the time when I ask her all these strange questions about how she would search for something, but I think it really helps. And then you can take that kind of information and bring it to whatever tool it is that you're using to do keyword research. I also think something that isn't always used is utilizing internal search within your website to see what people are searching for on your website. When they're already on your property, how are they searching for things? Are they finding it? Those types of things are extremely helpful, especially when you can pull those out and then utilize all of the tech stack that you have behind you to help you mine those keywords.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I think as SEO professionals, you three know that most people talk to Google the way they talk to their mother-in-law, right? So short keywords that are typically 2-3 words tend to be a popular target. However, long tail keywords present an opportunity to rank for longer search terms your customers are using to find your business. Chad, what is a long tail keyword and why should they be included in every keyword strategy?
Thanks, Scott. So a long tail keyword is any keyword phrase that's 3 words or longer. And like we said, long tail keywords are usually much more specialized. They usually have lower search volumes, but they're also more concise. It's really something where the user has made up their mind, whatever cycle they're in, about what they're looking for, and they want something more detailed. So I'll give you an example. If you got a home improvement store and you're trying to improve your organic rankings and your presence in your search and everything else, and someone searches for French door installation near me, and you manage to pop up rank well for that phrase because you offer that kind of service and product, and the user is going to come and find your website for this long tail keyword phrase. And they are more likely to do something with that because it's relevant for what they're looking for. They want a specific kind of door, they want it installed, and there's a good chance they might call your store or they come visit you or do something more with that search than just poking around because it's relevant. But getting back to long tail keywords, the long tail is getting longer. More people are doing searches for long tail phrases, and especially with voice search, voice search in itself is naturally long tail. People ask questions about voice search, like what time's the store open near me? Or when is it closed near me? Or does this restaurant offer this certain kind of menu, etc. So it's going to be a lot of phrases. And I always show clients, this is how many variations of this phrase there are. Now, the long tail could be anywhere from could be hundreds, now thousands of keywords long, and that's a lot of tracking to do if you're using a keyword ranking tracking tool. But with that said, I say, well, let's take a look at Google Search Console and see what's reporting that's coming into your website. You usually will see more variations of these phrases. And I won't get too much in the weeds about SEO related to long tail keywords, but I will say this. Having on-page content that's long form and descriptive of your company's products and services is an additional signal to Google that's related to these long tail phrases. So it's going to help you get better visibility for that. You might not see your two major broad phrases jump up 10 spots in our rankings if you put more content, but having a long tail keyword, having these custom content will help with better visibility. So thanks, Scott.
Oh, that's great. Fantastic. Thank you, Chad. Selecting the right keywords to target should never be a guess. The keywords you target should be well thought out, planned, and prioritized, as well as researched. Carrie, what tips do you have for researching and determining the right keywords to target?
Great question. I think there are more and more people who have my philosophy on keyword research tools. I think for the most part, they're crap. And I don't really use them very much. I think that we get stuck in this cycle of, well, this tool says that this search should bring 1,000 impressions a month or something like that. And therefore, if I rank really well, I should get close to 1,000 impressions a month. And what happens when you do this and you tell your clients this, or people use these tools, is they set an expectation that is not realistic. That 1,000 searches a month that tool is reporting is it's not a real number. My best use of keyword research tools is sort of created an hierarchy of importance. If it says this phrase gets 1,000 and this phrase gets 10, proportionally, this phrase gets more than this one, but I don't believe the 1,000 and I don't believe the 10. I think that they instill a false sense or a false expectation. So that's my caveat when I'm like, how do we find these terms? I agree with Joseph that you absolutely have to talk to your client. And one thing I really encourage my clients to do is don't talk to me like an expert in what you do. Talk to me like your customer. What do they say to you? How do you find the keywords that way? And so then, we have these conversations, and I do use tools. I'm not going to say I don't use tools, but I use them with a realistic view of what can I use this for? And I like getting more kind of out in the weeds a bit to find keyword phrases, like interviewing my client or looking at what the reviewers of my client are writing about. What words are they using in their reviews? Because that's how they think about the service or the product that they've purchased. That's the words that they use. And then I use that as kind of a seed to find a phrase that I can optimize for, either using their Search Console account or maybe a keyword research tool that'll at least give me an idea of volume, not one I believe, but, an idea of volume. And sometimes we, optimize pages for something called a 0 impression keyword phrase. Mark Williams Cook did a really great presentation not that long ago about this whole 0 volume keyword. And I really encourage you to check it out. I thought it was an excellent presentation. And he really talks about using a system for finding keyword phrases that might not show up in your keyword research tools. Really well done. One thing, we have clients all over the United States and Canada. We have one client that is they install and design septic systems, which is in general a rural kind of community need. So volume is not going to tell me anything. If I were looking at volume, it would be 0 for nearly every phrase I was looking for, because there might be, 100 people rurally that need this service, but they still need the service, and you still need to optimize for it, and you still need to show up. So I had to get like really creative on how to find the communities that needed this. And I actually used census data, because one of the things that they collect in the census data is who uses propane versus who uses heating oil versus who uses wood versus who uses natural gas or electricity to heat their homes. And you can draw some parallels, right? People who use wood or propane probably live in a property that has a septic system. And so, you have to sometimes get really creative to find those phrases that really will work for your client. And don't just rely on keyword research tools. That's like my biggest piece of advice. There's so much more out there.
Awesome. This is great, you guys. And we just got a great question in from Dallas while we're on this particular topic. I think it's relevant for all three of you if you want to take a crack at it. Can you provide more examples of long tail searches that don't include a location-based terminology? So we're not going to look at French doors installation near me, something other than that for a long tail phrase.
Mm-hmm. I think of parts and pieces. Maybe you need a new hinge for the French door. And so you're looking for or a new knob or something like that. Or maybe you need a new thermostat for your dryer or something like that. So those are examples of really long tail that if you supply those parts, you could optimize for. Not only could you optimize a content page for it, like Chad said, that deep content, show a video of how to replace the part, and or explain to someone all the safety things they need to go through this checklist before you take your dryer apart or something like that. So that would be like an example that isn't location specific, but that you should be considering.
Yeah, I think part of the way that I kind of visualize it in my mind is it's a narrowing down, right? It's you start out with that head term, right? That you don't really know what you want, right? So you're looking for basketball shoes or something like that, right? And then while you're doing your research, right, you start to pick up these things, right? You want these different features, right? You want it to be a certain color, and then you want it to have it to be the sole to be a certain way, or to be stabilizing, right? Because maybe you have ankle issues, things like that, right? So you're refining that so much so that your search term starts to become that you want blue ankle stabilizing basketball shoes, and maybe it's even longer than that, right? Maybe you're adding more and more to that, right? So you're zeroing in on that exact thing that you're looking for, and it happens in a progression. I feel like I do this a lot. Maybe there's something that my kids are looking for that they want. I have no idea what it's called, but I know what it does. So I'm starting to search for it, and then when I figure out what it's actually called, then I can find that a little better, and then kind of drill down into it, right? So I think that's the way that I visualize it in my head. It's a once you start to formulate what it is that you really want, from what you thought you wanted at the beginning, that's where that long tail comes in, and it's also the keyword that's going to convert the most, right? Because the person already has found that's what they're looking for, right? And if you have that and you're ranking for that, they're going to come to you, and they're probably already pretty close to being ready to take their wallet out and pay for it, right?
Yeah, that was great. And so sticking with that, kind of sticking with a theme of keyword research. Keyword research can be made simpler by taking advantage of free and paid tools. Joe, you were on a good topic there. So what's the top keyword research tool that you recommend?
I love using Also Ask. I think that the wealth of information you can get from those those kinds of queries that are kind of linked as entities to the thing, to maybe that broad topic that you're looking at, is the best way for my brain to to start to drill down into those content categories, or those different segments that you're going to have to think about when you start to do your keyword research. I mean, we use a lot of the large enterprise size ones in the agency world, as far as SEMrush and BrightEdge and Ahrefs and all of the rest. I think they're all good. I'm agnostic. I actually like to use all of them, because then I can kind of pull everything together, deduplicate things, and then start to drill into what's really important. But I think that's probably a wide array of the different things that we look at here at the agency.
Awesome. Fantastic. So I know if we choose a keyword that's competitive, we might have trouble surfacing in the SERPs. Chad, how do you know if a keyword is too competitive to rank for? And should you go after these search terms?
Thanks, Scott. That's a good question. We get this when I'm doing keyword research for clients. Sometimes this is a question that they usually point out at, are like, well, why can't we focus on this phrase? And I say, well, it's possible, but let me get into this a little bit further. When it comes to local SEO, we want to make sure that the phrases that we're targeting have local intent. So I'll give you an example, getting back to the home improvement store. Let's say that in my keyword research, I come up with a head term, the word doors, DOORS, nothing else, just doors, all right? And I do a Google query for doors, and I'll see a whole bunch of different information that Google's providing for that phrase. I'll see product listings for doors sales. I'll see local listings, so there's some local intent. And I also will see a Wikipedia entry for Jim Morrison in a Doors band. So what are people looking for when they're searching for doors? They might be looking to buy a door or install a door, but they might be into classic rock and roll. Who knows? But my standard for this is look at the local intent for this phrase. Yes, the word doors by itself does have some local intent, but you're going to be competing with a lot of different entities online that are not related exactly to what your industry may not be about. I mean, for the word doors, we're competing against the Wikipedia entry for Jim Morrison. We're competing against a lot of other different brands and services and journals and everything, and all these variations that are not exactly for home improvement. Some are and some are not. With that said, if you have a well built up domain, you've been around for a long time, and you're ranking pretty well already for some broad phrases, say this home improvement store is lucky enough to be ranking, say, at page 2 for the word doors for a local search, it's not impossible to rank higher for that. It's not a bad thing. But again, we were talking about earlier with long tail keyword activity, if someone's going to convert or not versus broad, people are going to be looking around more for a broad phrase, and they may not have their minds made up yet. So if you want to track keyword rankings for a broad phrase, go for it. But if you're in, say, position 59, you want to be realistic. That's probably going to be pretty tough to get on page 1 for a broad phrase like that. But then it comes down to local intent. How much local intent does this keyword phrase have? When I talk to local customers. Thanks.
Awesome. Great answer, buddy. So I'm going to switch it up just a little bit and kind of get to pages and blog posts, because we know optimizing your landing pages and blog posts for a single keyword or keyword targets used to be a primary keyword strategy. Now things have shifted a bit, and businesses are targeting multiple keywords in one post to rank for. Carrie, can your keyword clustering help businesses boost their total keyword ranking?
I think it can. I think that you have to be careful that there has to be a site-wide strategy when you set it up, or you're going to end up having multiple pages optimized for related or very similar things. And then you get into content cannibalization and then just poor performing content, because Google is going to pick the one they want to show, and there's going to be 4 other ones that get like no impressions, nothing. So I think you can cluster your keywords if they're related on a page, and you can get content on that page that will support those phrases. And I generally encourage clients to start there. Start with one page, get all the content on there, and then see how it does. Now, if you end up with, let's say, 5 targets on a page, and 2 of them are doing really well, you're crawling up there, you're getting some volume, you're getting some conversions, you're doing really well, but you've got 3 that are just not performing. It's there, the page won't rank for those. That's when we start iterating on this strategy. And I take those 3 words that are doing very well and create a supporting page on those 3 topics. If I can, if they're really, really closely related, I might not want to do that, but if I can figure out a hook or a way for those to have their own content on their own page and try and move them up independently of the page they were not performing well with, you can kind of iterate into that topic cluster and keyword cluster. I do encourage to start with all of them on one page if it makes sense to do that. But sometimes you have to take it a step further because they aren't all going to be equal performers on that one page, more than likely. And the other thing I tend to do when I'm clustering keywords and clustering topics is I look at suggested search a lot. I think it is very influential, and I use a tool like Answer the Public or Stubble to kind of see what suggestions come up for any fatter head phrase or even a long tail phrase. You can see suggestions, and that kind of helps me decide what Google thinks may be somewhat related to the phrase that I've seeded in there. And those might be things that I'll try, maybe even as secondary or tertiary targets. So maybe my 5 initial keywords didn't work and I took 3 off of the page. I have 2 left, but I see some things in suggested search that might work. So I might add two more back in on the page and just kind of keep working on how hard I can make that page work for me. I would rather make a page work harder and do well than have to create 5 different pages.
I love that idea of iterating on those 3 non-performing keywords. I think that's fantastic. Joseph, so let's talk a little bit about how can businesses effectively segment and prioritize its final selection of keywords so that they're easier to manage and implement in its SEO strategy?
All right, so I think
it's a loaded question. That's a lot.
Yeah,
there.
that's a lot to fit into one question, but I think you're finding your content topics, right, or your pillars or the categories that you're gonna bucket things into, right, during that keyword research. I feel like going into it, you probably have a vague idea of what it's going to look like, and then you start to refine that as you do your keyword research. The first thing I need to say is similar to what Carrie was just talking about, is you don't get too invested in that's what it has to be as far as your pillars go, because it can change, right, or it should change, right? If you think that the structure of things should be one way and that you should have this hub and spoke model, right, and this is this is the topic you thought was going to be in the center of that, and these are all of the things you're going to write around that, and then after you launch some of that content, the performance is not there, and the way in which things are showing up within the search results is different, and you're not being rewarded with rankings for specific things, you may have to change course, or you may have to break that topic up into separate pieces, right? So I think that's something that gets lost, is that we come up with this content strategy, and that's what it's going to be, and it's always going to be that. We need to be malleable, right? We need to understand that it's testing and learning, and especially with the way that the search engine is ranking things now, and the way it can understand all of the different nuances and different entities that are involved in a single page, and how it's connected to all of the rest of the corpus of content that you have on your site. I think you need to be able to take that data after things are performing already and then funnel it back in and search and do additional research and figure out if you should be separating topics, or you should be maybe getting rid of a piece of content that is cannibalizing something else, so that the thing that you really want to rank can shine. Right? You need to be changeable, and I think that's the best advice I can give as far as categorizing keywords and coming up with those types of clusters for any brand.
I would love to add.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just would love to add. I think that's great. And the other thing that we need to remember, especially in local, is what works in one market will not work in all markets. And so the way you have your content written and structured for Lexington, Kentucky, that whole process and that whole cluster may not work in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We don't know until we try, but we need to, like you said, Joseph, be malleable and understand that, okay, we'll try it, because if it works the same way, then that's less work we have to do. But if it's not working, we got to change the strategy here.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, you had said malleable. I was thinking flexibility is key for a client to maintain that, to be able to test and move like you were discussing. So kind of determining ROI is essential for any marketing related activity, and keyword optimization is no different. Chad, how important is it to pay attention to keyword rankings as a KPI?
That's a good question, Scott. And obviously, if you have higher keyword rankings, that's going to usually give you better click-through rates, better visibility. And keyword ranking reports has been around since the inception of SEO. And I mean, there were companies that were called, Rank Booster, Boost My Rank, etc. But a lot of things have changed from then until now, because rankings can change very quickly. Rankings can be personalized depending on what your search history is. Google pays attention to that. Local rankings can have impacts on proximity, depending on how far away you are from a certain location. That's actually a very strong ranking signal in itself. So when we look at rankings, I tell clients, let's look at trends. Let's not pay too much attention to one or two keywords, but let's see how this is done over an extended amount of time. Because obviously when you're pushing a campaign, it's not an overnight process. It takes time and work. And it's an indicator, but it's not a gold standard. The gold standard is what traffic comes to your website or through your listing and what conversions are happening. Obviously, that's what everybody wants. But let's say that you're looking at keyword rankings and you're doing quite well. And let's say for 2 or 3 phrases, you're in position 3 or 4, and you're ranking well on page 1 of Google. Then all of a sudden, 1 month comes by, you get an update, and let's say your rankings drop. And they're like, okay, what happened here? And that happens sometimes because Google is changing algorithms, or it might have been something that would happen just with proximity. We don't know. And when that happens, I tell clients, hey, let's not panic. Let's take a look at, see how the traffic search volume is doing. I mean, are we still doing good year over year? Are we up? Are the conversions still great? And this could recover pretty quickly. It could be something else. But again, it's not a ranking report should never be used as a gold standard to know how well an SEO campaign is doing, but as an indicator. But pay attention to traffic in situations of volatility. But however, you should be looking at trends, because a good SEO campaign will be showing positive trends and rankings over time.
Love it. Fantastic. All right, we're going to switch it up one more time. So let's dive deeper into content optimization to improve keyword ranking. Content optimization software can help your business create high quality content, identifying keywords and questions search engine crawlers are looking for on the page. Joe, how long does it typically take to see an impact from content optimization? And any specific tools you might recommend?
Sure. Wow, that's another loaded question. Now, I guess, I mean, I work with and have worked with in the past some very large brands, and it is completely unfair, but sometimes it is the case that they can push a piece of content out, and you can see it start to rank almost immediately, and start to garner traffic, right? If it's well optimized and part of your keyword strategy and it's it's pushed out on one of those brands, like you could see overnight success, right? But for maybe a smaller business or something like that, it takes time, especially if you don't have a large amount of content that you've pushed out, and you're not seen as an authority in that space. You're not being given those top rankings right away. You're going to have to fight your way to the top. So I've seen it take up to 6 months for a piece of content to really start to perform to the level where you would have expected it, based upon all of the great optimizations and things that you've added into that page. So there is definitely a range. I think I mean some of the things that are not really like SEO type of things that are like Crazy Egg. I like to see heat maps and things like that. I like to see what's attracting users to look at certain things. Some of our clients here use Content Square, which I think has been a great tool to do similar things, see customer journeys, things like that, like see where there are pain points, right? Find out, are they getting to a certain point in that piece of content and always leaving, right? Then you probably want to try to, if you want to get them all the way to the bottom, you have to change things up. If it doesn't matter if they get all the way to the bottom, maybe you should be moving up whatever email capture you have on the page to somewhere above where they usually get to, right? So I think those are two that I use pretty regularly. But I'm sure the other panelists have some other ideas.
Go ahead, guys.
So my mentor was Mary Bowling, who is, legend in local SEO, go Mary, who has since retired. I miss her every day. And she has been saying for years and really hammered it home to me way back in 2005, there is no better tool for SEO than your own eyeballs. Look at what is already ranking. What can you do to be better than what is already there? That's like the best tool I can tell. We don't use tools to optimize content as far as like, other than rank math, to add page titles and meta descriptions. Like we don't really use tools. We use our eyes, and we use, tactic that we've developed and best practices, jump links and video, and does Google like video in these results? Is video showing up in the SERP? What can we do to mimic that? How can we take over those video spots if that's what we need to do to get visibility? I think that, in my opinion, the best tool you can use is your eyes and your brain to try and just see what's already working, because Google's telling you this is what we want. So why not use that, right?
And I'd like to comment on this as well. And the other panelists gave some excellent feedback, but when you're developing content, you want to make sure that it's written for the user. It should be written naturally. You keep the keywords in mind. You do use them as well, but Google is smart enough to understand semantics when you're talking about content. So if you're talking about a specific subject and you're talking about orange juice, Google might know this is related to Orange Julius or something like that. Oranges and orange juice are related. So you don't need to really have a keyword dense article or a piece of content to rank well. Rather, you want to write as if it's someone is going to read it and grade you on it the next day. Someone real and really personable. So please always write naturally for what the user is looking for, as opposed to worrying about keyword density. Keyword density is a really outdated SEO strategy that might have worked in 2005, but it doesn't work today. So
It did work
Great.
in 2005. That was like one of the first things we did. We're like, what's the percentage? What's the number?
Yeah, that was great, you guys. I really appreciate that. Your answers were fantastic. So we see Google supporting new schema markups each year, such as video schema, and it's become a great way to tell Google what it can expect to read on the page. Carrie, how can businesses leverage schema markup to boost their keyword strategy and outshine their competition?
So I used to do a lot of speaking on schema before I really dove deep into local. And one of the things I always used to tell people was schema is not a Band-Aid for poor SEO. There is no magic bullet markup that you can put on a page that will rank you better. Absolutely. And, I've had multiple Googlers comment in sessions, and I've seen comments where they're like, mark up everything. Like if there's a markup for it, mark it up, video, reviews, whatever it happens to be, products, location, if you can, mark it up. Now, keep in mind, sometimes it gets messy. And so you have to be careful that you're nesting and associating your markup correctly if you're marking up multiple things. As far as, putting your keywords in your markup, I have not seen it make a great big impact to use like a phrase in there. Now, if we're marking up a product and we're using product markup, we obviously want to use the name of the product, what the thing is. I would even encourage you to maybe include regional or generational colloquialisms in things that you mark up, because like Chad said, Google gets semantics. They understand the relations between things, and what one person might call a hot water heater, another person might call a boiler, and that's regional as well. So I think that you should, if you can mark it up, give it a try. I would watch two things when you add markup. One would be that you're not breaking your speed, your usability of the page. I'm not one of those people that's like, it's got to be fast or it's not going to rank. I think that's garbage. But I do think that sometimes you add markup to a page and weird things happen, and all of a sudden it's pokey or elements on the page don't load. It's conflicting with something else. So I would definitely keep that in mind. And there was another thing I was going to say. So make sure that it's fast, and make sure that it makes sense to the user. Don't stick crap in your markup that a user wouldn't use. Think of it as telling Google what you want the user to know about what you're marking up.
Okay, great. Chad, is keyword optimization limited to your website, or should you be optimizing for keywords on other platforms and places as well?
Thanks, Scott. This is actually a really common question I come across, especially for clients who are trying to really promote their listings. And the truth is, optimizing for keywords is different on a website than it is for a listing. And a short answer is you cannot really optimize a listing for keywords. So Google Business Profile, a Google Business Profile might have a description that you put up to 750 characters of words into. And sometimes we get asked, hey, can we put keywords in here to rank higher for this and that? The truth is, and I will say, Carrie, your company, Sterling Sky, does a lot of research on this. Thanks a lot for that. But you can't keyword optimize a listing. The only thing in a listing that makes a difference from a keyword positioning or prominence issue would be the name. So if you're fortunate enough to have a target keyword in your actual name, whatever, say your home insurance company, and then you're fortunate enough to be called Home Insurance Brokers, and that's your official business name, that will have an impact on rankings. But other than that, listing optimization is different, where you really want to make sure everything's filled out properly. You have all the attributes filled out properly. You want to make sure all the information is accurate about your address, your opening hours, your services and products, whatever you offer there. But actually for keyword focus, it's a bit of a myth that you can optimize a listing for phrases. With that said, there's been a lot of spam over the years related to the Google name. The only part of the listing that you can, I wouldn't say you break Google's rules and violate the rules and put a keyword in the Google name, but a lot of people did this for a long time and got away with it for a long time. But Google's starting to crack down on that. This is when you see a listing and you see people writing, San Diego home installation or something like that. That's not related to the actual business name. Google doesn't like that. It goes against their policy. You can't do that. With that said, though, I think things might change in the future. I know now, but it's different than an actual website, where a website you can optimize the title tag and the meta description tag and the header tags and the content, etc. So anyway, thank you.
Right.
So I think the benefit. Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead, no.
I was just going to add, absolutely, Chad, 100% right. What putting keywords in those descriptions does, though, is it's like usability, right? The user that sees that, oh, they sell the thing I'm looking for. I think that's the piece. So should you list a bunch of keywords? No, but you should talk about what you sell.
Right.
Awesome. So we're running up on time. So I'm going to just kind of skip over to the last one here, and I'm going to open up this to the panel. Does anyone have any final thoughts or advice to leave the audience before we wrap up today's webinar?
If I can add to that last question a bit, I think search engine optimization is not just for Google. I think you can think about it. I think YouTube is kind of a forgotten thing as far as optimization and keyword targeting and creating a linkage between your on-site content on your website and those videos, right? Linking back and forth makes sense. Something that a lot of companies don't do. And then I think ignoring TikTok and things like Pinterest and your ability to have keyword rich information that can be ingested by the Googles of the world, or be able to be found on those as search engines themselves, is kind of a lost art as well, especially if your client is selling products on the through those types of means, especially on Pinterest.
I think that's a really good point. I think that, we talk about Google is the new homepage, right? For brand queries. So you want to own your brand across, whatever shows up on the first page. But I think that there's something to be said for what is ranking for your top keyword phrases. Do you have a listing there? If you add a few keyword phrases to the description of your listing, does that help you get somewhere? Sometimes if you can't beat them, join them. So if you have no hope of outranking Zillow or whatever the directory in your vertical is, maybe you can work with Zillow or optimize your listing or something like that. I don't have experience with that. I'm making it up. But as an example, maybe playing their game can get you some visibility. We've seen that in the lawyer space with like Justia and those Avo directories. Those types of things can sometimes help by just optimizing your description on those third-party sites.
Awesome. Chad, anything for you?
I would make sure to get back to long tail keywords. I saw a ComScore statistic that 92% of the searches being done online get less than 10 searches done per month. Mm-hmm. So again, they're very long tail. They're very specific. And that's not something that we're usually going to put in a presentation when we're talking to a client about what keywords is the search. We're not going to show 3,000 words with that get less than 10 searches a month, obviously. So how do you optimize for that? And it really comes down to content. There's nothing, you can't go wrong with well-written content. You just can't. It does take some time. It does take some effort. You want to make sure it's well done. But you can really see how people are thinking and about your service when you put content together. And even if you're doing blog posts, one blog post gets, say, 10,000 searches in 1 month versus another one that gets maybe 500 and they're an equal length or whatever. Well, maybe there's a lot of long tail keywords related to this blog post. you're talking about. And maybe that's something you should keep in mind when you're optimizing your landing pages. So again, with well-written content, you can't go wrong with that. Communicate that to people searching. It's a better ranking signal for long tail keywords, and is showing relevancy and also an authoritative position on what you have in your industry when you do that. So thank you.
Awesome. Great. Well, that wraps up for today's discussion. We've covered a lot today and hope you found it to be informative and actionable. If there are any questions we didn't get to, we'll make sure to follow up afterward. We'd also be happy to answer any questions you didn't have a chance to ask if you'd shoot us a note at marketing@rioseo.com. I'd like to thank everyone for joining today's discussion, and I have a special thank you to our panelists, Chad, Carrie, and Joe, for taking the time to be with us today. If you'd like, go ahead and let the audience know how you can best be reached. We'll be sending out the webinar recording in the next 24 hours. It was a pleasure to moderate today's discussion. As a reminder, we host these types of local search conversations every month. And our next webinar will be Thursday, July 28th, where we'll be debunking common SEO myths. That sounds like fun. We hope to see you there. Thanks again for joining us today. Thanks, everybody.